Good morning. This is Geometry Do Now 29.1 video key. We're going to take a little bit of a stroll down memory lane with this. So I'm setting you up for chapter 9, which is going to, and stuff in chapter 9 and beyond that is going to be showing up it's going to be some quadratics and work with radicals showing up. As soon as we start dealing with the Pythagorean theorem, we're getting square roots of stuff, and square roots are going to involve working with radicals and working with the quadratic functions and stuff like that. So we need to do a little review on that. So here, no calculators, please. I do not want decimal answers for these things. What I want is to simply have you simplify these. So for A, the square root of 4, hopefully you know the square root of 4 is 2, but it is also negative 2. So it's plus or minus, what we can actually say is, because negative 2 times negative 2 is 4. So what we're looking for is the the factor that we could split 4 in half with. So in a timesy sort of way. So we're looking for breaking 4 up, not as 2 plus 2, but 2 times 2, or negative 2 times 2. So plus or minus 2 is the answer for A. Now B is a little trickier. B, we can break the square root, I'm going to say SQRT of 27, because that's what I've got for formatting in this thing. Square root of 27 could be broken into the square root of 9 times 3. So we could get the square root of 9 without resorting to fancy irrational numbers that you can never finish writing and never have a repeating pattern. We can get the square root of 9. Let's pull that out of there. So we're going to pull that out of there and make it 3 times the square root, okay, of 3, like that. Only we have to say plus or minus, okay? Plus or minus the square root of 3. That's plus or minus 3 square root of 3. The way you would write this would be plus or minus the 3 square root of 3. You can also write it like this. There's another way to write the plus or minus. Let me erase that plus or minus. But I don't have the ability to do that with my typing thing here. This means plus or minus. So what this is saying is 2 different numbers. It's saying positive 3 root 3, which means 3 times square root of 3, and negative 3 root 3, which means 3 times the square root of 3. All right, hopefully that was clear. Now let's deal with 1B. No calculators again. Once again, I do not want any answers that are decimals. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here. I'm going to say, I can say 5 square root of 18. That's going to be square root of 9 times 2. This I can pull out of the square root and make it 5 times 3 once I get the square root of 9, and I'm left with a square root of 2 inside. And of course, it's plus or minus. So that's how you do with A. So A will be, we turn that into 5 square root of 9 times 2. And I'll move my cursor. And that becomes plus or minus. That's how I'll write it in my typing. Plus or minus 5 times 3 becomes 15. So I'll just say 5 times 3 square root of 2. And that's what's left behind. And then we can simplify that business into this. 5 times 3 becomes a 15. Okay, and I'm leaving a little space so you can really see that minus sign. I know it's tiny on the screen. So now B, first you got to add the 4 and the 9. So it's going to be the square root of 4 plus 9 becomes the square root of 13. And we can't actually reduce that at all. All we can do is say, okay, that's going to be plus or minus the square root of 13. You could get an irrational number from that, but we're not doing that right now. And frankly, your work is mostly going to involve getting this form, the simplified exact form, instead of the rounded decimal version. Okay, now what do we do with these? What do we do with these? You may remember that it is frowned upon to have a radical in the denominator. So what we're going to do is we're going to multiply that times 1. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to multiply it times the square root of 2 over the square root of 2. We're going to do the same thing over here. We're going to multiply this times the square root of 5 over the square root of 5. And so what happens is this denominator here just becomes a 2. Square root of 2 times square root of 2 is 2. This denominator just becomes a 5. And so this one here ends up being the square root of 2 over 2. Okay, which is possibly a plus or minus. I'm going to leave it alone, that plus or minus thing right now alone. I really want to focus on what's called rationalizing the denominator. What we're doing is we're finding a way to multiply the denominator by something that makes it not an irrational number. It's a little easier to work with the irrational numbers in the numerator. So now this one, of course, becomes 1 times root 5 in the numerator. If I say root 5, assume I mean square root of 5. And square root of 5 times square root of 5 will be 5. And so I'll put my answers in here. A will be square root of 2 all over 2. And B will end up being square root of 5 all over 5. Okay, you may notice there's just there's a little bit of a pattern to those. And you should know that all of these, and this do now, are actually going to be, again, similar problems on the exit ticket as well. So hold on to this for this lesson. So now the last one, we're going to borrow a tool from like terms. So 4 times the square root of 3 plus 7 times the square root of 3. One way you can think of this is I've got 4 square roots of 3 and 7 square roots of 3, which means I have 4 plus 7 square roots of 3. So I can, you could think of this as the distributive property. This could end up being 4 plus 7, okay, all times the square root of 3, and we can simplify 4 plus 7. That's just going to be 11 root 3. Okay, so A will end up being, okay, we'll break that into 4 plus 7 times square root of 3, which will equal 11 square root of 3. Okay, if you see me write it without a parentheses, I'm meaning the next thing after it is the thing that's in the square root. I'll often put parentheses around it just to be really clear, but you don't actually have to do that. Now the next one, we got some square roots of 2 and some square roots of 3. So what we're going to do is we're going to regroup this stuff. Okay, so I'll underline the square roots of 3 in red. So there's 1 there, that's a 1. Okay, and I'll underline the square roots of 2 in green. Okay, that's 1 square root of 2, of course. And so I can group all of this stuff. I'll end up with, I'll end up with 7 plus 1. Okay, that's going to be times the square root of 2. And then over here I'll have, probably should have picked a different color, but that's okay. I'll have 1 plus 6 times the square root of 3. Okay, so that's 7 square root of 3 And this is 8 square root of 2. And yeah, I'll use purple plus that. Okay, so, and that's as far as you can go. You've simplified it as far as you can go with that one. So B ends up going from, we group the square roots of 2. So 7 plus 1 square root of 2 plus 1 plus 6 square root of 3. And that simplifies to 8 square root of 2 plus 7 square root of 3, like that. All right, I hope that helped. You will be doing similar stuff to this for the exit ticket, so it may be useful for you to check your Google receipt when you, the Google form receipt when you do this. When you do the exit ticket, it might help remind you. I will help walk you through the exit ticket. We'll give it a little time at the end of class to do that together, okay? All right, I hope that was helpful.